Thanks for tuning back into the show. And we have a Jazmine Sullivan Heaux Tales album review for you guys. Speaking of some really good music that is kicking off in 2021, we definitely wanted to talk about this album. Shout out to you, man, because you put me onto this thing. So,
you're slacking. You're slacking,
bro.
bro. Michael's sleeping on it, and it was a project that I knew you would love. Like I've only known you for so long, but I feel like I'm getting a better sense of your music taste, and it's good music. So I knew you would love it. Or I hope you do.
Well, yeah, we're gonna find out what I feel about it.
Yeah.
And at the time when we talked and you had put me onto this, and we obviously decided that we were going to talk about it, I was very deep into the graduation 2020 stuff, so I was very embedded in like listening to, like, still recapping all the 2020 music, like listening to it, all that. So I wasn't like fully really into like, okay, what has just dropped. And this missed my mark. And when you had mentioned it to me, you're like, oh, Jazmine Sullivan dropped like an amazing project. And I'm looking on Spotify, and I think it just released like a couple days prior, and the numbers for it were ridiculous. Like, I know that Jazmine Sullivan's a talented artist. I've always heard her. Like, I think my initial introductions to her were always like on like those old Wale albums, right? She always would do the hooks on those types of albums, but I never like heard like a full project, I felt like, from Jazmine Sullivan. And then you put me onto this, and I'm like seeing all the numbers and seeing how good it's doing, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm definitely sleeping, missing something. Like, what do I got? I got to bump this thing.
I mean, well, she was huge, and she's an older act, not in terms of her age, but like in terms of how long she's been on the scene. She's been on the scene for a while, and I think we all remember her from that, legendary busting out the windows out your car. You know what I mean? And so when she came in the game, like, she was huge. She was solidified, at least as like a real R&B, like I don't even know how to say it, but like as a technical singer, she's been blowing us away for a while now, which is why I think, because she kind of had this hiatus like through the 2010s, and I think that's why when she comes back with this project, we're all listening, right? Because we already know what she can do, and we've kind of been missing that for a while, anyways. But I think down to like the cover art, the title, the concept of the album, and then the singing on this thing, the songwriting, it's she came back like clearly with like a synthesized like message, you know what I mean?
Yes, very much.
If that's the word I'm looking for, but like
cohesive.
Cohesive. Yeah. Cohesive.
An absolutely cohesive project.
Or just concise is kind of what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? If it really felt like, and it's not a long project, but there's still a good amount of it's 32 minutes runtime with some skits in here. But I think going through the album, it feels dense while also feeling light. Like, you know what I mean? And
it's interesting. Yeah, it feels longer than 32 minutes to me.
Right, definitely. Reason. And 32 minutes is including the skits. It feels like there's a lot of music in here. And that's why I'm saying it's concise in that way, because there's every track has its message, and then it's just on to the next one with a skit to kind of support that and support the overall theme of the album, and then it's back into another track that was clearly thoughtful. And it all just resonates because it seems so honest. But I'm glad you got on it, dude, because I still remember, like, when I got the chance, it always feels good to put your friend on to some music when it's going to hit. Like, not when it's absolutely. Like, oh, you need something new to listen to, maybe I can throw this out. But, like, when it's finna hit, and you're like, oh, buddy, do I got something for you?
It hit, man. Just the smooth, soulful nature of this project alone, just the aesthetic, the sonic appeal of it, for me, amazing. I absolutely adore this project. It is easily, I mean, that's not to like spoil the whole rest of the review, but like it's very early. We're only, when this is coming out, I think it's like early February or like maybe late January, whatever it is. But it's got to be early contender for one of the best albums of the year. Yeah. I would be very much, again, that's so early to say that, but I would be very surprised. We would have to be a pretty freaking amazing year for music.
It would have to be a strong-ass year.
Strong year for this not to even be an honorable
Lauryn
mention.
Hill would have to drop for me to forget about this project.
It's a little reminiscent of Lauryn Hill now that you're kind of mentioning it. Just not enough, but there's a little bit of touch in that where it's like it's very empowering, especially for not only women, but women of color. And it's just really it's a statement, man. This album's a statement.
1,000%.
It really is. And like going off of just the title, and it's funny because obviously it's Heaux Tales, but it's spelled, Heaux. And I was kind of like, I had to Google it because I was like, or look it up because I was like, what does that even mean? Because, I mean, you listen to the album, you get it, you understand, like, I guess the premise of what she's going for, like, just to kind of spark note the whole kind of idea of the project is more or less of like, the equality or the inequality, I should say, of like the double standards with women and men when it comes to sex and sexual relationships and just the dating scene. I feel like in America during this time, this era, right? Like there's the sense where like, if a woman is promiscuous, sleeps around, etc., she's considered a hoe or a whore or whatever you want to call it, versus a man, like, even though he can be considered a player, like sometimes that actually has a good connotation to it. Like that just kind of that contrast of like, and how it doesn't make a ton of sense, that again, that double standard. Other artists have touched upon it too, like, but not for a full project. I feel like this. I mean, maybe I could be wrong. I'm sure that there is, but
of course, I'm sure there's a lot of artists who have tried this, but right, it's always different when there's the artist that does it and really pulls it off.
Yeah, absolutely. And real quick, I just want to look. I looked up. It's actually on Urban Dictionary. This is actually a Cajun variation for whore, hoe, or whatever.
Oh, so
it's
funny.
like. So again, I guess it means the same thing. I was very curious. I was like, I didn't understand what this maybe meant, but apparently it's not. It's like an Urban Dictionary thing. And I think that
I think it could have been that, or I think it could have also just been a cool way for her to make hoe kind of seem a little bit more classy. Even with it's just I'm not a hoe, I'm a hoe with the HEAUX. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It even comes through like on the skits, and which is interesting because I'm not really a big fan of skits. I mean, they have to be purposeful, like A Good Kid, Mad City, like those types of skits are great. Obviously, right? Just an example I can see as well, but like
as an example, some of the best skits of all time.
Maybe right, exactly. But I love how she makes these, or she calls these tales instead of skits, and I think it kind of gives it such a. It really helps to convey like the message and the meaning she's going by, obviously, and I think it gives it a lot more context, right? Because it's different examples of this basically happening, right? Where either a man is taking advantage of a certain one of these women's tales, right, or they're being perceived in a certain way because I think literally in the first tale. Quote unquote, obviously, in Antoinette's tale, Antoinette, whoever Antoinette is, I'm not sure, but talks a little bit about, how, women are just as sexual beings as men. And it's just, that's kind of, for them to, be so discriminated against and sort of being viewed in the kind of these negative lights for that. Again, just it kind of goes off of the juxtaposition of if a man is seen as promiscuous, like it's not as negative, right? So I loved obviously the tales. I thought they fit in really well, and they all kind of brought a different dynamic to the album. Like even one of the tales, I believe it was Rashida's, I want to say, where was talking a little bit about, like, I think that was a lesbian couple or whatever, and she ends up cheating on her significant other and things like that. So it kind of even and then sort of like her like not trying to come to terms with like how this happened or how she was able to do this, and she's like, I loved this person so much, but I still just did it anyway. I don't know why I did. Like,
when she says like I don't know why, or like when she's like kind of at like one of those, when she's at a loss for words, like I don't know why I did it. I wish I couldn't have. You know what I mean? Like that's when it's just so profoundly honest. You know what I mean?
And that's what I think I love about this project so much, just off the bat, is not only the idea and the sentiment behind it, but then like how it was structured, especially with the quote unquote tales, where, I mean, they're skits, but I love that they're called tales. I think that really adds like a beautiful dimension to this project. So, and then of course
1,000%, it kind of supports like this feeling, right? Like almost like an anthology, like of different people, right? Point. And I think that's kind of what she's going for, like almost like it's like little tales and fables of these different women in different capacities and exploring their promiscuity and also trying to give themselves the right self-talk, you know what I mean, and also confronting some things on. I forget exactly which Taylor skit it is, but when there's the one woman who's like, listen, if you don't got money, I can't be with you. You know what I mean? And I think that's like one of those things that's like, that's the thing we've heard before, right? You feel me? Where people are trying to get the bag, and
Exactly.
or you know what I mean? Especially a lot of women in hip hop, they're up front like, yo, if you don't got bread, like, can't rock with you because I got a certain lifestyle I'm trying to maintain. And then, but then to pull another layer farther than that, like, oh, of course it's probably stems from my childhood where I didn't have anything, and I made it up in my mind that if I'm gonna, you know, when I grow older, I'm gonna have something. I'm gonna, you know what I mean? And
Exactly.
that kind of reflection, I think, is oftentimes like the perspectives of it all that get left out. You know what I mean? Of the music. Because the songs, especially when it's on a club record, you feel me, or like a real party type record, that's not the content we're looking for to support or kind of explain all those actions. But for her to then get down to just a real honest, open, and kind of, you know, genuine and authentic skit, right? Like, it doesn't sound like these were skits that were written down on paper. These sounds like real voicemails that were hitting her phone.
Yeah, exactly. And even then, again, even like Ari Lennox, like her tale is more or less
Her
talking
tale was
about.
amazing.
It was great because she talked about another dynamic where it was like she kind of allowed the man that she was with to like dictate her life, and then she just kind of got wrapped in sort of like the physical, like their physical connection, instead of like the entire kind of spectrum of the relationship. She was focused so much more on just that aspect of it and how it was a detriment to her, detriment to, like, you know, her psyche, all of that. Just, it ruined the relationship, and her inability to kind of see the big picture. And I feel like, I mean, that's not only like a women thing. That's, I mean, that can happen to men too. But
1,000%.
But I do feel as though that men can sort of take a little bit, sometimes can take advantage of that in a different way. It's a little more destructive at times when men do it. And again, not to say that there aren't women out there that, you know, are taking advantage of men. It goes both ways and vice versa. But I mean, this is a different. But again, there's, like I said a little earlier, it's that societal stigma that is attached to this, and I think that's the aim of this project, is kind of break down some of those stigmas and be like, hey, can't we talk about this from like from a human sort of perspective rather than like a gender perspective? You know what I mean? Because it's like a physiological and psychological nature of humans they're trying to talk about, convey, versus just this, why does it have to be a gender thing? So I loved, and again, it's very in the now. I think it's an important conversation, and hence why I'm glad you wanted to not only for me to listen to the album, but really, again, talk about it too.
And I love that it's a wide array of different representations and like different capacities in which either a woman would feel like she's a hoe, or feel like she's being treated like a hoe, or other people embracing their lifestyle that they want out of life, regardless of how you're gonna label it, or they could care less of whether or not you label them a hoe. You feel me? Like, that's just it's definitely super insightful, and was an amazing listen to kind of get to some of the tracks, just like vocally. Jazmine Sullivan does not miss. She does not miss. Pick Up Your Feelings is ridiculous. Even right in the third track, she lets you know from the get-go, I'm not playing with y'all. She is finna sing. And I think it's intentional that she brought on, you know, like, her features are three of the most competent, you know, singers that we have in today's age, right? Her, absolutely. Anderson .Paak, and Ari Lennox. Ari Lennox, for me particularly, is right there. Like, if we could have a little Lauryn Hill, it would be Ari Lennox. And but like, I think Jazmine Sullivan intentionally put these people on there to continue to support and maintain the certain quality that she has. But it really, at the end, ultimately, like, just, she outshines everybody to me vocally when she's there. I just think that says a lot when you're also performing against her, you know what I mean, or Anderson .Paak or Ari Lennox, because they're not to be played with. You feel me? Like, they're not to be played with. But she goes on here and she puts on a clinic, dude.
It literally does. And Pick Up Your Feelings, I think, is, again, a great example, like the best example of the vocal range that she has, because especially in the hook, like I couldn't believe some of the low notes that she was hitting, and then the higher ones. It was crazy. And the powerful aspect and passion that was coming from her voice, it's incredible. It really reminded me, very reminiscent of like some older, like Destiny's Child, or even like, and then vocally more or less like that. And then the mood and ambiance kind of gave me more of like almost like older, like 2000s Usher a little bit. And I loved that hi-hat combo. I thought the pianos and strings and
some of that
were
beat
really
selection, I can hear the Usher.
A little bit, right? Wow, like, can't you kind of like listen to like a song like You Got It Bad and kind of hear a little bit of that? Or what's the song with Alicia Keys that he did a long time ago? Started when we were younger, you were mine. My Boo. That's right. I had to sing it. My Boo. Yeah. It had that little bit of like mood to it, and like sort of sonic.
My Boo is a banger.
Right. It gave that off. But the crazy part is it was Usher and Alicia Keys playing off of each other. This is just Jazmine Sullivan.
Just her.
And my goodness, she just I loved this song. Loved this song.
That range you're talking about is so real, and it's very, very like evident that she can go high or low. And I think at least me coming into it, again, kind of knowing her from Busted Windows at Your Car and some of the other kind of one-off things I've seen her do throughout the years after that, she's always had a very powerful voice. She's always had a lot of presence on tracks. So I think those are the parts that I expected to be good, and she delivered on that. But when she like the track with Ari, On It is ridiculous, and she goes up and down, you know what I mean, from being like very powerful in your face to like very sexy, sleek, high falsetto kind of, you know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
It was a really nice, like slow tempoed, very moody song. And I thought the grooves with their vocals, I thought they mixed really nicely with that instrumental and that production. Interestingly enough, I almost felt like I could have heard her on this song a little bit more than I would have Ari Lennox. But I thought it was interesting that she put Ari on this one, because I think it in a way, too, it actually more or less challenged them in a way to like make this a song like this work, because I didn't think that Jazmine and Ari, just the way that the music type of music that they make, I almost felt like her would have been a better fit, but they really both just.
That's interesting you say that. That's interesting you say that.
Just with the guitar chords, I think that's what really gives it for me. I think even though she shows up a lot later in the listing, so it's fine. But initially when I heard this song, I was like, because when I was actually listening to it in my car the first time I heard it, and when I heard it, I was like, oh, this has to be the Her song. And I was like, I could have swore, though, Her was on the back end. But I was like, maybe I
might have thought that, too, actually. Because there was a lot of times where I was listening through the album knowing Her was going to come on. And I was like, oh, this sounds like a pocket that Her would kill.
Exactly.
Sure.
That's where.
But I think there's something to the vibe of On It, like it being also just like a super proud song, or just like, like, again, sexy or just out there, and it's definitely promiscuous. And I think Ari Lennox has more of that kind of catalog versus Her, I think, has not a serious delivery, but has a little bit more of a delicate kind of delivery that's a little bit more. Not to say she doesn't have the vocal chops, because Her can literally do anything. But in terms of like the content and the subject matter, I feel like this is something that I've seen Ari Lennox already dip into, you know what I mean? And Ari also has like, I love when Ari can layer like a beautiful, beautiful vocal track, and lots of the times like the theme or the hook will be very playful. You know what I mean? Like after hearing her deliver a beautiful run, lots of the time, whether it's like these like cute like hooks, like even if it's Shea Butter Baby, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's where she really fits into this, you know what I mean? Because this is also the section where Jazmine Sullivan's getting into her bag, where like we're not just here to break down the word hoe, you feel me? We're also here to like empower ourselves and let ourselves be promiscuous, and I think that's where like Ari, for me, she also represents that in R&B right now. You know what I mean? A girl who vocally is still there, like with everybody else. Like it's not, you know what I mean? Because I think like Summer Walker is also in that kind of vibe. But Summer Walker, in terms of her delivery, sounds more reminiscent of everybody else right now in this sound. Where I think Ari Lennox has like the playfulness of somebody who's in 2020 and she's very 2021. She's with the internet. She's hip, you know what I mean? But she has that old school sound, which is why I think it's a very perfect blend for Jazmine Sullivan. You know what I mean? To get a little hip, have that younger youth to it, but still just put on a clinic, man. These girls can sing, bro.
Yeah, they really can. They really can. It's absolutely amazing. Like, I love this project so much, and I love what you said too about how she's actually able to play off of the older, more nostalgic type of songs, like an On It, or like even like a little bit later in the listing. I really thought Lost One had a very nice nostalgic sound with those like psychedelic guitars. It was more of a ballad types of song. But then a lot earlier in the listing, she puts a song on this like Put It Down, which has like a little bit more of like a modern spin on hip hop R&B with like that higher tempo and just the synths and the 808s, and then how the hook's a little bit more of like a sing rap, like it has that more of that catchy, versatile kind of delivery from Jazmine. And again, like I love what you said too, because again, this comes right after. I love actually the part of this album that I like the most is like it was cool that Ari's Tale didn't come and then follow it with Ari Lennox's feature. Ari Lennox's feature came later, a little bit like a track later, but in between that was Put It Down, and it fit Ari's Tale pretty well. Put It Down did because of the theme, because it was more about like someone, you know, simply being for someone that they're there physically, you know what I mean, versus like
allowing
what else,
lust
everything else
to kind of cloud your vision and or your judgment.
Yeah. So I thought it was just very smart.
Put It Down is also fire.
I love that song too. Yeah, I mean, I love a lot of these songs, and then Price Tags with Anderson .Paak, like he's one of my all-time favorite artists. It's
and that's
crazy.
why I was like, you know, when you put a name like that on the track list, you know what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, you know what you're doing. This is a like, you know, like he's not the biggest superstar, but you know, Anderson .Paak has a huge audience. And
he's pretty much a household name, I feel like, at this point. Close to it. As close as you can be. Close to you can be without being one. I think he is.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of as a high B list, high B list, if that, not to disrespect, you know what I mean, or take away or understate anything that Anderson .Paak's doing, because I had the same reaction where I'm like, not only am I looking forward to all three features, and the fact that she picked three features with such range and kind of depth to all of them, like, you know, they all make this kind of music, and they also are all on the top of their game right now. I'm looking
all
forward
in their
to
primes.
And the fact that Anderson .Paak fit perfectly, because I will say, I feel like I've heard other Anderson .Paak features that kind of fell short. And I can't come up with any of them at the top of my head, but I feel like I've heard Anderson .Paak kind of be inserted in certain tracks where they want to get the jazz feeling, right? Like they want to get the soul jazz lead vocalist, so they just put it in Anderson .Paak. And the delivery and his performance is always on point, but it doesn't always complement anybody else on the track. But this one just went perfectly. It went perfectly. I have nothing bad to say about this project. You feel me? I don't know.
Me neither.
It wasn't even lacking. I think the only thing I could possibly say is that like I would have been fine with a couple more tracks, but I absolutely love, and I think this with this album in particular, it works. I think other albums it doesn't work. When you can have an album kind of go on repeat. You know what I mean? And it kind of flows into each other, and then you actually give it a whole nother listen. This is one of those projects where that actually happened with me. And that happens with me usually when I put it on. Like, I can put it on repeat because it's only 30 minutes runtime roughly. When it starts and loops again, I'm really perfectly fine with it. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of artists go for that, but it doesn't usually translate. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of artists go for the last song really flows back into the first song so you can have it on repeat. But when you have 45 minutes or a 50-minute project, it doesn't usually happen unless you're like a Kendrick Lamar, which I will literally repeat that project until I get every little thing. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But this one, I'm talking about whether you're going to do like some active listening or some passive listening, I can have this thing run back and feel like it's all just connecting seamlessly. You know what I mean? But the only thing I feel like if I could find one thing to kind of criticize this project for, is that like you didn't have to just give me 30 minutes. I would have taken 45.
I almost, though, it kind of goes back to my earlier sentiment where I see your point, but I actually disagree. I think that this fits really well as a 32-minute album. And I honestly believe you could actually put out like a sequel to this, or you could do something where it's like you could go
Heaux
in
Tales 2 would be sick.
A different perspective, right? Or as more of a continuation, or like you could do it in like the male perspective versus the female like you could. There's a lot of things I think you could do from this, and it would just again continue to like talk about, have these conversations and these the narrative that she's going for, and I think that she does it in a way that is still entertaining but also enlightening at the same time. Like she doesn't really. There's nothing here where I feel like, and that's why I love the tightness of it. There's really nothing here where she's wasting any time, or there's a song here that doesn't fit the aesthetic or fit the theme. That whole point of it is why I think I love it so much. And, I almost, like I said a little earlier, it feels longer than 32 minutes. I know it's only 32 minutes, but it doesn't feel that way to me when I listen to it.
32 with skits included, and which is just crazy.
Yeah, it really is. Like, that is really, for me, why I love it so much. And yeah, I'm a big fan of this Heaux Tales album for sure. If you had like 3 of your favorite songs from here, what would they be? Like, if you were to pick 3.
3 of my favorite songs. That's tough. Put It Down. That's tough, dude. That's tough. Also, I gotta say, Donna's Tale, I'm pretty sure was the one that I really loved. I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but 3 songs would probably be Pick Up Your Feelings, On It, and see, now I wish I kind of went through it right before we got on, because I'm like kind of forgetting what the other side sounds like, but I remember being shocked by how much I liked the other side right before the album closed with the Her feature. I'll probably do those first 3 bangers that come up: Pick Up Your Feelings, Put It Down, and On It.
Cool.
But that's tough, you know what I mean? That's tough, because I remember Lost One, the other side, and Girls Like Me also being, you know what I mean? Like, there's a real...
Yep.
Whether it's because of the skits and how it flows, or just the musicality of it, there feels like there's an act 1 and an act 2.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
really an act
I was
3,
kind of blown away with both.
I very much agree, actually, with Pick Up Your Feelings. That's definitely one of my favorites for sure. I actually really like Price Tags as well with Anderson .Paak. And then I'm definitely going to go with, I think I like Lost One, just for, again, the nostalgic psychedelic guitars that are on that, more of a ballad aspect of it. But it's hard for me to not like look at the Ari Lennox song. Or
now I'm hearing Lost One as you said that, and that was a banger.
Put it this way, I think that's a test. The fact how hard it is to pick one of these songs, is, I think, or 3 of them, I should say, is a testament to how amazing this album is. So huge props to Jazmine Sullivan for not only the musicality, but the theme, again, the features, the production, the vocal range, all of it, just the performances. I really, this is going to be a heavy rotation album for me in the first quarter of 2021, and we'll see where it sits at the mid-year and at the end of the year. But strong start.
Strong start. Sorry, not to cut you off.
No, you're good.
What kind of is even more insane is that she doesn't even consider this an album. She's come out and said that this is not an album. I'm pretty sure, even tweeted something like verbatim, "Don't call this an album, please." Like, something like, she just said it's not an album, it's an EP. You know what I mean? She feels like it's not a big enough body of work, or she didn't spend enough time, I guess, sitting with the project herself before she released it, for her to consider it an album in her catalog. Now, albums, EPs, just all the verbiage behind what a project is nowadays, that's all gotten very, very complicated. This feels like an album to me. It definitely runs like an album in terms of quality. Is up there with an album. It's still only 30 minutes, so I guess it could fall towards more of an EP kind of side. But by her own words, she calls it an EP, which
interesting.
You know what I mean? I think so. I listening to the Joe Budden podcast. You know, I don't want to steal this actual words, but they kind of summed it up really well. Rory, one of the hosts there, is just like, if this is your EP, what the hell do you have in store for an album? You know what I mean? Like,
because this is good. This is some good stuff. So big shout out to Jazmine Sullivan and everyone that worked on this project. Definitely, I think early out the gate, one of the best albums of 2021 so far.
100%.
And we'll see where it sits mid-year and at the end of the year.